Hello, folks. I would like to attempt to say this. It might take me a little while to kind of get to it. Like in my last sermon, the crucifixion of Don Parnell, it took me a little while to get to what I wanted to say. So it's hard to do, and this one's harder to do because with that one and a lot of other ones, I've kind of got a grasp of it in my mind a little better. But this one is like, it's kind of like at the fringes of my mind, and I have to kind of bring it together in my mind, and then I have to try to get it said in a certain kind of way so maybe it could be understood a little, and it's difficult to do. I think it's pretty much like this. Imagine John the Revelator. He had seen 2,000 years into the future, and he went and seen, and he looked back all through the age of Pisces and all through the church ages. He was looking back on it. Then he comes back to, I guess, himself or whatever, I don't know. It's a speculatory in my opinion on, the Isle of Patmos there where he was supposed to have the vision and the vision. Hard to say exactly how that worked itself, but nonetheless, at least from the Piscean version of it, vision. So he comes back to himself, and then John, I assume, is tasked with the great task of trying to put that in a book form, what he had just saw. Now, can you imagine how hard it would have been to have just seen all that? He goes to like the far reaches of his own mind, the far reaches of 2,000 years into the future in his own mind in some sort of vision or whatever, and then he's come back to reality, and he's got to put all that he saw into a book form, or write it down or something, so that, or say it or whatever, however it was recorded originally, so that it could do justice to what he had just saw. That had to be a monumental task, because he was probably he was at the edges, the far edges of his mind, trying to piece that back together, what he had saw, which he probably couldn't hardly make sense of himself at the time, and he's got to put that in book form. So that's basically where I'm at with this. I have got the far reaches of my mind. I'm trying to make sense of it, and I'm putting I can, but it's just very difficult to try to reach into the far reaches of that and to put it into words so that it can be recorded, so that somebody can, perhaps make some sense out of it or use it. So, anyhow, we were talking about, we had went down on Don's farm, Don Parnell's farm, a couple weeks ago after a couple of his last sermons there, and we were talking about many years ago, probably about 10 years ago. I had went down to Don's farm with some folks from New Zealand that had came to Ohio, and we all went down there, and I've kind of got like a natural GPS, I call it. I call it like a spiritual natural GPS. And whenever we were down there on his farm, I just come to me that place was the place called Gilgal in the Old Testament. Gilgal is a place right on the other side of the Ohio River, or I'm sorry, Gilgal in ancient Israel was a little place right on the other side of the Jordan River that they had first crossed over, and it was a camp of King Saul, and it was where Saul went to gather his armies to fight. Fight with all the ites, the Amorites and Moabites and whoever. And so anyway, I just kind of felt like that place was Gilgal, that Don Parnell's farm. So anyway, we go back down there after about 10 years. I've been down there like 10 years ago or whatever it was. And we were down there for a couple days. And I was telling Don Parnell, I said, this place is Gilgal. I'd said before it was Gilgal. Because, see, Don Parnell is King Saul. I had preached on how that the books, the Judges, it went from the Judges into the age of the kings in the Old Testament. And I said, well, the Judges was obviously the age of Pisces because it was the age about judgment. And then it went into the age of the kings, which was Aquarius, because we're all kings and priests now. We're all gods essentially now. So anyway, and then in between there was Samuel, and Samuel was the prophet William Branham who had anointed King Saul. And then, a funny thing is, at the very end of the books of the Judges, you run into the word the breach, because there was a breach made because they all went out to fight Benjamin, and there was a breach made between the tribes there. And so William Branham preached the breach, and I think about the sermon called The Breach in about 1960, 61, or 2 or 3 or something like that in there. And then he went into the 7 seals and all that. I guess it was. So the breach was there. The Judges was there. The Judgment Age. The King Age, the Aquarius was there. And even the book of Ruth is stuck in there. And Ruth was about the kinsman redeemer, redeeming Ruth to her position. And from her came the lineage of David and Jesus and such, as I recall. So, of course, William Branham preached about the kinsman redeemer and how that, we all know it was the wedding supper and all this and that going on. Everybody, we were redeemed from thinking that we had sin and all this, blah, 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 blah. So everything played out just exactly perfectly. Okay. So anyway, and then what happens is in roughly 2002 or 3, then Samuel, William Branham, anoints Don Parnell king as the first king of the Age of the Kings, which is Aquarius, because we know that Don Parnell is the first prophet of the Age of Aquarius. We all know that. Okay, so anyway, so Don Parnell is King Saul. Well, King Saul, like I said, his place where he went to gather in the ancient Israel King Saul, not Don Parnell King Saul, ancient Israel King Saul, where he went to gather his forces, his army forces to fight against the ites, the Amorites and everybody, was in Gilgal, which was right on the other side of the Jordan River. Okay, now we know today that the Jordan River, ancient Israel Jordan River, equates to the modern Ohio River in the United States, because that was where William Branham was preaching. He was baptizing and preaching, and the voice came down or whatever, said, whatever that was, and said, as John the Baptist forerun the first coming, you forerun the second coming. So we know John the Baptist was baptizing in the Jordan River. Okay. So anyway, the Jordan is now the Ohio. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's the Ohio. Okay. All right. I'm not going to prove myself, but you can, So anyway, we know that the Jordan River. So Don Parnell's farm is right on the other side, like 10 minutes from the Ohio River today. So it's right on the other side where you would cross the Jordan River, or the modern Jordan River, which is the Ohio River. So that is where King Saul of today, Don Parnell, goes to that farm, and what does he do down there? Right on the other side of the Jordan River. He don't go down there. Don Parnell doesn't have armies, per se. I mean, you might say we're his armies. You might say that. But, the people who understand what the heck he's saying to some lesser or more degrees, you could say we're his armies, and that might be true, but what he does is, see, in Aquarius, like I said, in Aquarius, an army, a strong arm, is a strong mind. It's a strong understanding, strong revelation. It's an intelligence, a high intelligence of how you think about things. Because Aquarius, that's what it is. It's the highest intelligence. So what he does is Don Parnell, King Saul, he goes down to his farm, which is modern Gilgal, and he does the modern Saul thing down there, and he goes down there, and he's there by himself for a couple of days, or hunting or whatever he does, and, he ain't got a lot of distraction, in a sense, and it's just all about gathering his forces, or he goes down there and thinks for 4 or 5 days at a time or whatever, and he gathers his forces, he gathers his understanding, you see. He gathers his spiritual intelligence, and he gathers it, he sits down there and he gathers it, and that's how he gathers his armies. So he gathers his armies, the armies of his mind, the understanding in his mind, because that's what an army is in the age of Aquarius. An understanding is an army, essentially. So he gathers his understanding, his armies, to go out and fight the ites. So he gathers all his forces down there. He goes down to the farm, he gathers all his forces. Then he goes back to Dayton, Ohio, and he gets on the camera, like what I'm doing, and he fights all these ites out here, all these religious ites, all these Moabites and Philistines and Amorites and Jebusites and whoever. All these religious, denominational, factional thoughts that are still Piscean religious factional thoughts, essentially leftover stuff. He goes down to the farm, he gathers his forces, and then he comes back and he preaches the message, and he fights through the mind, essentially. He conquers the promised land through the mind, through his gathering his thoughts down on the farm. He comes back and then he's got his forces ready, and then he goes out and does battle with all these Philistines, like, you know, the message people. I've always called the message people the Philistines. So anyway, he goes and fights them all, and are essentially, well, you could call it somewhat of a fighting, but he does battle, in a sense, spiritual battle, or mental combat, spiritual combat with these people, because, you know, I mean, they don't actually get out and fight, obviously. Now, if this is the age of Aries in the Old Testament, perhaps, you know, we would have actually got out and duked it out with the message people. I don't know, you know, but we aren't there now. So anyway, this is a spiritual combat, and that's how it's dealing with these ites. So whenever he goes and preaches, he's dealing with all these ites. He's conquering the promised land. Okay, as King Saul, as the first king of the age of Aquarius, the first prophet, king, whatever you want to say. So anyhow, and then another thing is this. The names Saul and Paul, if you think about it, Paul was, you had King Saul. And then so you go like from the age of the judges, to the age of the kings, and then you've got the first king is King Saul. Okay, well now after Jesus came, after roughly Samuel, but Jesus was like a second Samuel in a sense. But, like William Branham, he kind of like played that part too. So, but anyway, after Jesus came, then you had the New Testament. Okay, what's called the New Testament, the age of Pisces, essentially. And the first prophet, we know the first major prophet of the age of Pisces was Paul, or originally Saul, before he had his name changed. So the first one is named Saul twice, and then changed to Paul. Paul, Saul, just a change of Saul. Okay, so what you have is that Don Parnell is a modern King Saul, and he's a modern the Apostle Paul. Okay, so that's what his position is here. He's the first one in the age of Aquarius. He's that Saul Paul type. Okay, then and that's exactly what he's doing. If the last sermon that I listened to with Don Parnell, what he was talking about there was essentially, I can't remember just exactly what he said. I wish I could remember, but it put me in the mind of like an epistle. He was preaching about, I think he was preaching about Paul, and what he was saying was I don't, like I told him when I seen him, I said, I don't really care what you're saying. I just want to know what you're saying. I want to know, I don't care if he gets into, for me anyway, this is the way I look at it. Now, I'm not saying this for everybody, but for me, I don't care. I don't look at what Don Parnell's individually saying about this and that and what he thinks about this and that. I don't really care. What I really care about is what he's actually doing. Okay, so what I saw in that last sermon was that he was essentially, if you break it down, it was like, and I wrote at the end of it, I said, it was the epistle of Don Parnell to the spiritual, or the churches, because the churches today, the spiritually minded people are essentially what churches were in early Pisces. Okay, so I saw it as an epistle, as basically just like a written message, like a New Testament Paul written message to a literal church in Turkey or some crap, and modern Turkey, Asia Minor. And then what he was doing was his message itself was just basically like an epistle. If you read an epistle of Paul to those churches, That's what it would be. It was an epistle of Don Parnell. That sermon was an epistle of Don Parnell, the modern Paul, to the modern churches or the spiritual people of, like, the Philippines or West Africa. That was what 2 places he mentioned in that sermon. West Africa, I suppose, Ghana, Gold Coast, the whole thing, So anyway, it was like an epistle to those. And he was just playing a modern Paul. So I didn't care what he said. I mean, what he said is cool and all. I suppose I would read Paul. But really with me, I can't really stand to read anything. And what I've learned to do is like the other day, I got a new job. Okay, I got a new security job. So they hand me this rule book of everything. And I go down and I'm like, man, I don't want to read all 50 pages of this. So I just go down and I just start skimming through like the major things that are highlighted, the major key elements. Okay, like the summations of things, but I didn't get into detail. So a lot of times you can just read something. You can just know like what Paul was doing. Like, I know the books. I know like Paul's epistle to the Romans and to the Thessalonians or whoever, and this and that and this and that. Okay, well that's like your major category. So if you did nothing but popped open the Bible and read like the summary, then you could see, okay, well, Paul's epistle to these people starts on this page, blah, 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 without reading the whole thing. So anyway, so that's what I kind of do with Don Parnell now. I just listen to what he's saying, and I'm like, okay, I got what he was saying. What he was saying was he was preaching an epistle to these people, okay? I don't care what he said. You could get in there and you could read what Paul said, and you could do that. And that would be, you could get some good out of it. And I could listen to Don Parnell, and I'm sure I'd get some good out of it. But that's not really what I'm so much concerned about. Because if you'll notice Don Parnell himself, what he's been preaching about, a lot of times he don't get digging into stuff. He just talks about the summary of things. He just talks about, he'll talk about what William Branham did. And he'll say, well, then William Branham preached this sermon and this sermon and this sermon. And, even just the names of the sermons will pretty well tell you what was going on without having to dig into it and be Branham scholars and Bible scholars, which if you want to be a Branham scholar and a Bible scholar, that's cool with me. I don't care. But, I mean, sometimes I get to dig in too, but not very often anymore. I got stuff to do, you know what I mean? So, anyway, so I said all that to say this. Don Parnell is Paul. Okay, I'm just going to cut the crap. I'm just going to tell it. Okay, Don Parnell's Paul. Okay, all right. So he's Paul. He's preaching these epistles to people out here, the spiritually minded, who can accept it. And so that got me to thinking. And also, Don Parnell, some other things he's doing. See, if you dig a little bit into like what Paul was doing, Paul was talking about what he did was his commission, in my opinion, was, and pretty much undoubtedly, I don't think anybody disagreed with this, his commission was to basically sort out kind of what was going on during that age, because Paul was the messenger to that age. Okay, so he was dealing with people that were like debating, that had just come out of the Old Testament and they were coming into the New Testament, and they were like, well, what should we do this? Should we eat with the Gentiles? Should we do this? Should we keep this tradition? Should we not keep this tradition? What should we do? Okay, and Paul was writing them epistles, and then sometimes they would fight amongst themselves, and they didn't know just exactly what to do. And Paul was writing them. He was like, well, just do this. You don't have to. And most of the time, he was just saying you don't have to do it Old Testament stuff anymore. Basically, what he was saying. Okay, so anyway, and then also Paul, he had the ability to look into the future too, because he would talk about things like the rapture, and stuff that was hypothetically out there, even though the rapture was really there amongst them. The understanding of what it was didn't come till later on, in the age of Aquarius, really. But it was kind of a thought process forward. It really was. Paul was talking about things to come, and he was dealing with what was going on at the time. Okay, but his letters are mostly, I think, to deal with the churches and sort them out and keep them all sorted out, because he was the prophet for that age. So he was the message for that age. Okay, so that's what he was doing. He was dealing with people of that age. Okay, and he was talking a little bit about the future, but he was dealing with people of that age. That was kind of his job, what to do. Okay, so that's what Don Parnell is doing now. As our modern Paul, what he does is he preaches a little bit about the future, And a lot of the things he's doing is dealing with the churches, or dealing with the spiritual people of today. I want to say they're churches because that was a Piscean wordy term, an old wordy Piscean term. But today, the spiritual people, like in the Philippines or whatever, they're still, they're the modern churches, essentially. It's the spiritual, just the spiritual. And he's dealing, the modern Paul, the Aquarian Paul, is dealing with the Aquarian spiritual people out here. So, and then they get into like, well, should I do this? Should we keep this Old Testament thing? Or should we keep this Piscean age thing? Should we keep this religious tradition, or should we not? And he's dealing with them on that basis. And that's exactly what Don Parnell's doing. Whenever he does a sermon, that's exactly what he's talking about. He's dealing with everybody in this age and what they're dealing with and what their questions are and everything. That is his position. Okay? All right. So that brings me up to where I want to attempt to go to. And this is not going to be easy, but I'm going to try. So bear with me if I get a little slow. So what I have noticed is that for me personally, and I absolutely believe that I have the authority to say this based on what I am. And if there are a lot of other people out here that have some of the same characteristics that I do, that will probably be able to relate to this if they just think in their own minds, in a sense. But, we've all got positions to play. So anyway, see, Don, like I said, Don goes to Gilgal. He goes to his farm on the other side of the Ohio River. He's doing all this stuff. He's Paul. Okay, he's Paul. He's Saul. And so anyway, for the longest time, Don had kind of called me a islander. And he's really, a guy who's kind of like on an island. Like when I first came back to Ohio after a couple of years there, he said, "Oh, I see you decided to come out of the mountains. Come out of the mountains and come back and see us." And I said, "Yeah, and come from being holed up in my cabin in the woods, And that's really my personality, spiritually and naturally, both. I think is that I'm kind of like an islander and mountain dweller. And I'll tell you all, it's like this. As much as I enjoyed fellowship with everybody in Ohio the last time I went, I can't stand very much of it, to be honest. I can't. I couldn't. I don't think I could do that all the time. I mean, I may not be back for, I don't know when I'll ever be back, but I can't stand to do fellowship. I know a lot of people, they can do fellowship all the time, or a lot of the time, some maybe not quite as much, but probably more than me anyway. And for me, I've got to go hole up in a mountain somewhere and be away from people, kind of like what Don had to do, but maybe in a little bit different of a process. And I've maybe a little more so, and I've got to stay away from people, and then I can come back and tell you what I know. And I can't do fellowship all as much as they can, I don't think, because it kind of, as much as I enjoyed it, I loved fellowshipping with them, honestly, the last time we went down there. But I know I can't do that all the time, and so I need to go back to my island, and I'll probably be back. I'll be back, but right now I'm on my island, and I might be able to send them smoke signals or something every once in a while and talk to them a little bit, but I'm on my island. So out here on my island, I think about things, and I feel what I really want to say is that I feel kind of like if Don Parnell is Paul, then to me I feel like my equivalent would be John the Revelator, for several reasons. Because John the Revelator he was on the Isle of Patmos whenever he had the vision. So he's out there on an island all by himself. And so he's on an island all out there by himself. And what is he having visions of? See, Don, his position, his job is to deal with people of the age. He's got to move them forward as much as he can and to deal with the situations at hand because of all the things that they're coming out of. Okay, me on the other hand, I don't feel that that's my position at all. Okay, I'm not saying I'm not in the message of the hour, but I'm kind of not in the message of the hour. Okay, now I'm related to it, but I'm kind of not, because my position, the way I think of things is just different. I don't, those things drive me nuts, let's say. The idea of kind of like dealing with situations at hand and dealing with people that are like trying to come out of, like Piscean age stuff. I can do that. I can join in with everybody and do that, but that stuff kind of drives me nuts. And I'll tell you why. I just think it's just, to me, I look at it as sheer idiocy in a sense, and I'll tell you why. What people are dealing with. Now, I'm not saying the people who know better, and I'm not saying that they're bad people because they don't understand these things. It's okay. I'm in with the unity ideology. I'm not bashing people, but I'm just saying, for me, it's just idiocy. Please don't look at me bad because I think it's just sheer idiocy. But I've got a reason as to why. Because I don't look at as the idiocy or the people who have those ideologies as bad. I don't. Because I can understand. It's well, they've been steeped in this stuff for years. Well, it's been beat into their brains. It was beat into our brains. This old traditional stuff. So anyway, what I want to say is this. Here's what I feel like. The reason that I feel that it's just idiocy and I just can't deal with it is because you got to think about this for just a second. The Old Testament people, what were they dealing with? The Old Testament and into the New Testament, what were those people dealing with? Those people had been sacrificing sheep for like 2,000 years or whatever. Okay. And then all of a sudden Jesus comes, and then, they've been sacrificing sheep and stoning adulterers and all this and that for 2,000 years, under the law of Moses. And then Jesus comes and totally changes everything. And then Paul comes over and he's just done with it. He even gets tired of the Jews and like, I'll go to the Gentiles, So he's even more on over into the New Age. And so anyway, he's telling them, he's dealing with people that, we're not, 30, 40, 50 years ago, sacrificing sheep. Okay, that's a pretty big jump. They're going from all the stuff they're saying in the New Testament, and not 30 years ago, these people were out killing sheep. Okay, so that's it's a lot to take in all at once, right? So anyhow, but you got to figure, put yourself in John the Revelator's shoes for just a minute. John the Revelator had went to the Isle of Patmos. He's out there thinking, like I said, when you go out to these places and you form your armies, like Don and Paul and Saul, or Don and Saul were doing, going to the farmer Gilgal, and they're forming their armies in their mind. You got to figure, John the Revelator, he's out on this island, kind of doing the same thing, having a vision out there. And he goes 2,000 years into the future. He goes from the beginning of Pisces. His body is in 53 AD or whatever, around the time of Paul. And he goes 2,000 years into the future in what he sees, and is in like about where we're at now, looking back on it. Okay. And he's up to William Branham looking back on all this stuff, because he talks about the 7 church ages. That's how he was able to do it, because he went to the end of it and he seen the way back. Okay, so you figure this dude, he just went 2,000 years into the future, and then he's got to come back and write down what he saw. And then on top of that, he's got to deal with all these people that are still, not 30 years ago, are still debating whether to sacrifice sheep. Okay, he went to a time, 1,800 years or 1,900 years into the future, when nobody had sacrificed sheep for probably 1,500 years. Nobody probably sacrificed, I assume sacrificing sheep. Probably the last people that were into sacrificing sheep were probably over at about the end of the cusp of Aries into Pisces, would make sense. Would have been about, what, I don't know, 300 AD or something. So that for 1,500 years, probably nobody even really hardly thought about sacrificing sheep. Okay, and this dude goes 2,000 years into the future and then comes back, and then he's back with people that are like, should we sacrifice sheep still? It's like, should we eat with Gentiles? Should we take company with Gentiles? And he probably come back. You got to put yourself in John the Revelator's shoes for a minute. He probably come back, and he was thinking, oh my God. He was probably like, after all that he had seen, he went to dang near the age of Aquarius or whatever, and he comes back, and these people are, debating sacrificing sheep, and he's probably like, oh my God. He probably couldn't even deal with it. He was probably like, get me out of here. He's probably like, if he had to go talk to anybody for a while, he probably wanted to go back to the Isle of Patmos after he had left it and be like, oh, I got to get away from these people. I can't take this. Paul could deal with them because that was Paul's position. Paul was supposed to deal with them. He had the patience to deal with them. Okay, he had the patience to deal with these people and the transition. John the Revelator, to me, I don't think he probably, he was writing about 2,000 years into the future. You don't hear him ever talking about dealing with people. Of course, he wasn't the prophet of the age, but he wasn't dealing, the church age messenger of the age, I should say. But he wasn't dealing, John the Revelator didn't deal, whenever he wrote his book, he wasn't dealing with people who couldn't figure out what the heck whether they should keep company with Gentiles and what was who should be stoned and if they should stone people at all and this and that. He wasn't dealing with that. Okay, and that's exactly the way I feel. Is that I'm not dealing with any of that. I'm not in that position at all. I don't. If I had to go through what Don Parnell's going through, trying to deal with that, then I'd lose my mind. I wouldn't be able to deal with it. I can't hardly deal with it. I hate to deal with it. I hate to get on Facebook and see all this stuff, and I'm like, oh God, because the truth is that I feel like I have went 2,000 years into the future and seen a vision. Okay, now, and I'm going to try to explain that. And when I say vision, I'm only using the Piscean definition of vision so you'll understand what I'm talking about. Because it's really not a vision. It is a vision, but it's not. Because this is how I think about things. Take me for better or for worse. I'm just going to tell you how I think about things, and this is how it is. Like I said, I can't deal with these people. That just drives me nuts. Whenever people, like I said, John didn't deal with that stuff. Paul was dealing with it. And then Paul was a little bit in the future himself, but think about this. What I see is I feel like that my thought process is at the end of Aquarius and the beginning of Capricorn. That's what I feel like. My ideas on things, that's what I feel like that they are. And I look at this stuff that we have today of these people that have come out of the age of Pisces, these Brandemus and even the whoever else, the denominationalists, whoever, and I look at what they're saying. What are they saying? They're saying things like, well, now do we have sin, or do we? They're still debating whether they have sin. Well, think about it. What is it? What's the typical equivalent of that? They're sacrificing sheep, right? Okay, the sheep was a sacrifice for their atonement for their sins. Okay, so it was a question in Paul's day. It was a question of, should we sacrifice sheep to keep our sin away? And it was a question of, should we eat with the Gentiles? Okay, so it was a question of what is worldliness? It's a worldliness issue. It's a sin issue. That was what it was. You think about it, okay? And you bring it up to today, and what do you have? Don Parnell, Paul, what is he dealing with? People that have a still question as to whether they have sin and whether they have how worldly should they be? Should they keep company with Gentiles? Peter was like, no, I shouldn't eat with the Gentiles. And then the Holy Spirit is talking to him. He's like, no, Lord, I don't eat with these Gentiles. And he's like, go doubting nothing. So he goes and eats, and he's like, it's like, eat with me. And he's like, no, I can't eat with Gentiles, So, and he's like, just go on, eat with them, So it was they were dealing with how worldly should they be. What is the debate right now? The debate with these people is that, do we have sin? Should we sacrifice sheep? And how worldly should we be? Should we keep company with these people who don't know William Branham's message or whatever? This or that. Should the women wear pants? Should whatever? And that's what their debating was. Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we drink, smoke, and cuss? And should we deal with these worldly people and all this and that? Should we go out and talk to, like Don Parnell was talking about, talking to the mechanics and this and that, and talking to everybody? And should we keep company with these people and this and that? That's what they're debating now. And it's a modern reincarnation, essentially, of exactly what was going on in Paul's day. And you've got the modern reincarnation of, I said it, reincarnation, whatever. The modern reincarnation would probably be a better word, because we don't really die. The modern incarnation of Paul, Don Parnell, is here also to deal with them. Okay, you get one, you get the other. If you buy one, you get one free, right? So if you buy these people that are debating this stuff, then you get Paul free, I suppose. So anyway, you get a Don Parnell free, right? So anyway, so what I'm saying is that you got to figure from John the Revelator's perspective. He just come back 2,000 years in the future, and he probably was looking at all this. I'm just guessing. I'm just doing a William Branham here, because William Branham used to come up with all this stuff, and he'd be like, where the hell did this guy come up with all this at? He would take a story and be like, and he would tell you stuff that wasn't even in the story. And you'd listen to it and be like, well, I'll be damned, that probably did make sense. That's probably the way it was. And he could tell you what it was like without having been there. And so that's what I'm doing. I think that I can tell you what it was probably like without having been there, because I'm dealing with it now. Because that's what, like I said, everything's an incarnation of the same thing we had, so we're dealing with it now. So I think I can do this. John the Revelator what he was doing was he come back from 2,000 years in the future off the Isle of Patmos, and he's dealing with these people and all these people out here, and he's probably like, he can't deal with them. He's like, oh my God, he just can't deal with them, and he just looks at, after being 2,000 years in the future, he looks at what they're dealing with, and he's like, my God, man, what this is so backwards, it's unreal. Okay, you got to figure 1,900 years from now, at the end of Aquarius and into Capricorn, what are they going to be looking at? We're going to have 7 more church age messengers through the age of Aquarius, except they won't be church age messengers. Okay, they'll be, I don't know what they'll be. I don't know what we'll call them at the end of this age, but we're going to have them. Okay, and at the end of this age, whenever it goes from Aquarius into Capricorn, we're going to have another William Branham type, another Jesus type, and then when it goes into Capricorn, then we'll have another Don Parnell Paul type. Okay, in the first stage of Capricorn. But we're going to have all these things. It's all going to come back again, but it won't be the same thing. It's like we got into that kind of idea on, are there prophets anymore? Well, technically there weren't any prophets in the age of Pisces, because in Pisces they were church age messengers. They really weren't prophets. Okay, but we did call William Branham a modern prophet, and that was really true because he was a modern prophet. He wasn't really a prophet, he was a church age messenger, but he was a modern prophet, which is the same thing basically as a church age messenger. Okay, so we haven't had prophets since the age of Aries, okay, the Old Testament. So now, are we going to have prophets in the age of Aquarius? No, we're not. But whatever we're going to have is going to be a modern equivalent of prophets. That much I can tell you. I don't know what they'll be called, but they won't be prophets, but they will be prophets. Okay, so however you want to take that. Because Don Parnell, is he the prophet? Well, yes and no. Because Aquarius doesn't have prophets. I don't know what he is. I don't know what name we'll put on it at the end of this age. I don't know what we'll be calling him, but it will be a prophet and it won't be a prophet. Okay, because it's a totally different age. It's not the age of the prophets. Okay, but the concept of prophet does not go anywhere. It just modernizes. Modern prophet. Okay, so anyway, we're going to have 7 of them in the age of Aquarius. We're going to have, at the end of the age of Aquarius, a guy who is the equivalent of the 7th church age messenger, who is going to tell all the way back down through and sort out what all has happened in the age of Aquarius, and then be the breach and move us into the age of Capricorn. Okay, I'm 2,000 years into the future here. Okay, like I said, John the Revelator, he come back and he's like, I can't deal with these people anymore. And that's exactly what I feel like. I can't deal with these people anymore. But sacrificing sheep, you're still debating whether you got sin? Don't get me wrong, that's great. If you all need to deal with that and sort that out for this age, and Don Parnell and Paul needs to sort this out, and that's his job, that's good. I'm not saying anything about it, because that's what they're supposed to do. Like I said, he's got more patience than I got. So anyway, but for me, I can't deal with that stuff anymore, because I'm so far beyond the idea of thinking that we have sin and we need to keep company with Gentiles, and do women need to wear dresses, and do women need to wear pants, and all this stuff. I'm so far beyond that. I am 2,000 years beyond that in my mind. I can't deal with it. When people come up to me and they talk about stuff like that, I'm like, oh my God, I just can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. I'm so far beyond that. I just don't even think about anything like that anymore. So anyway, I'd just like to say this. One reason that I believe I have the authority to say this, and to make the lofty claim that I'm John the Revelator of this age, is because, and I'm going to try to get into my vision, is because, for one thing, I just happen to be a Capricorn. Okay, so whenever I talked to Don Parnell a while back, I told him, I said, here's the deal. I said, most of the time you have issues dealing with people. When I was talking to him, I said, most of the time you have issues dealing with people who are in a past age, trying to get them up to where we're at right now. Okay, and John the Revelator, though he was 2,000, he had seen a vision of 2,000 years in the future, he still lived in 53 AD, or roughly whenever Paul was there. Okay, so he was that age. So I'm not saying I'm out of this age. I'm saying my body's here, but I'm saying my mind ain't here. Okay, John the Revelator, his mind was 2,000 years into the future, but he lived in 53 AD or whenever, roughly about the same time as Paul. So John was in a different kind of a position, because Paul was dealing with just trying to get all those traditional Aries age people up to the beginning of the age of Pisces. And John, on the other hand, went to the end of the age of Pisces and seen over into Aquarius. So he was like one generation ahead. He was thinking way ahead in a sense. So it was almost hard for him to deal with it, based on he was thinking forward as opposed to backwards. So he couldn't deal with he had the equal opposite problem of dealing with the age that he was in, that the Piscean, that the Aresian people had, sacrificing sheep, and they could come out of that. The people, what I'm saying is that all the people out here that are in the Piscean age and can't hardly come up to what Don Parnell's saying to get them up to the message of the technical hour right now, they're having a hard time getting there. Okay, so he's dealing with them, and they're having a hard time, and he's having a hard time with them in a sense, and me, on the other hand, I feel like I'm having a hard time from the opposite angle, because I'm just so far beyond all that stuff that I have the same equal trouble dealing with the age I'm in that they have, because they can't move up to it, and I'm having trouble dealing with it because I feel like I'm 2,000 years out here into the future. Okay, so I got the equal problem, which the unity message is kind of solved, because the unity message covers an umbrella of everybody, okay? And we always thought the unity message has been the idea of, we can be in unity with everybody who, even no matter if they even believed in sacrificing sheep to this day, not a Messianic Jew, but like a literal Jew that believed in literally sacrificing sheep still to this day. We could be in perfect fellowship and communion with a guy like that, no problem. Okay, we could be in perfect fellowship with a Baptist or a Branhamite or anybody. That's what the unity message is, and that's good. But they're on the same hand, the idea I think was to say that, and I had believed this for a long time, was to cover everybody up to where we're at and say it's okay. It doesn't matter even if you're not in the message of the hour, essentially, roughly speaking, then it's okay. It doesn't matter. We can still have fellowship. It's, we're still all humanity here. We're still all one. Okay. So, because, we're all mankind. Okay. So anyway, and you can't, it's like, on a side note, people talk about, people won't talk to each other, and they won't, that maybe they'll go for like years and they won't talk to each other. To me, I don't look at it that way. That they think that they're out of fellowship in a sense, And to me, I don't look at it that way. Nobody can ever be out of fellowship. We're all material dirt. I don't think of it in terms, it's probably Capricorn, but I don't think of it in terms so much of the fellowship that makes you break fellowship. In a sense, that's true. That's probably more of an Aquarian way of looking at it. And that's really true that, obviously if you don't have fellowship with somebody, then you don't have fellowship with them. That's got its own truth to it. But for me, I don't think you can even break fellowship if you don't fellowship with somebody, because we're all still dirt. We're all still material. We're all still the same material. I don't care if somebody gets mad at me and they don't talk to me for 5 years, or I get mad at somebody and I don't talk to them for 5 years. It doesn't matter, because we are all still dirt. We are all still material, of the same dirt, of the same atoms, of the same bone, the same flesh, the same whole thing. Okay, so I don't believe you can even break fellowship in my mind. Now, that might not be the message of the hour, because, I'm not saying I'm in the message of the hour. I somewhat am, because I can appreciate the Aquarian version of it that, if you're not in fellowship, you're not in fellowship. I got that. Okay, I'm not saying that don't need to be dealt with too, but that's not what I'm doing. That's not what my position is to do. That might be Paul's position to deal with that type of a thing. But for me, I think of it in material terms. So as far as I'm concerned, I could never break fellowship with anybody. Even if I don't talk to them, I would still never break fellowship with them. If I sat up here on the Isle of Patmos out here and don't talk to nobody for 2-3 years, and then just one day wander into Ohio and see everybody, then I still haven't broken fellowship with them. That's the way I feel about it. Okay, so anyway, I look at it in more terms of a material fellowship. And I don't think that can be broken no matter what you do. But I hope you all understand what I'm saying. That, fellowship, yeah. I mean, you can break a conversational fellowship, right? I get that. Okay. And I'm saying that you got to figure John's position. John had to come back to 53 AD, so he had to deal with the beginning of the age of Pisces and their thought process on it. So I'm saying, even though my thought process, I'm trying to make a case, I'm getting ready to, as to how I'm 2,000 years out in the future in thought. I'm not saying that I can not be in 53 AD or 23 Aquarius AD. I'm not saying I'm not in that. And I'm not saying that I don't have to deal with that, because I do. I do have to deal with the idea that fellowship is not just material, that it's an intelligent conversation or whatever, or like a more dare I say traditional form of fellowship by definition. In terms of, I'm not saying Aquarius's version of fellowship is traditional in the sense of Pisces, but you know what I mean. It's like, but I got to deal with that. I still have to deal with that, because I'm part of this age, so I'm still part of that conversation, and I still gotta, even if I go for like 3 years and don't feel like that I need to see anybody, I still have to, because I'm part of this age, and that's how the age looks at it. So I can't just stay away, okay? Because I got to deal with this age, even if to me it means nothing. I can, I'll tell you about a story, and I'll try to get on with it. But people call me for years. I have done this. Friends call me or whatever, or text me. And I just don't text them back for like 3 months or whatever, or something like that, because to me, I'm doing stuff, and it's not that I forgot about them. I love them all very much. But I'm doing stuff, and then if I write them back in 3 months, I'm just like, okay, it's no problem for me, because I just, I didn't have anything to say. I just, maybe I should have said something even if I didn't have anything to say, right? So because, for the sake of being roughly friendly, right? So anyway, so I might write him back 3 months later, and then I had this one guy, which I really liked, he's a good friend of mine, fairly, I didn't know him very well, but he wrote me, and I just didn't have anything to say really, and I wrote him back like a month later, and he's like, man, it took you a month to reply, and I think he was kind of mad about it, and I was like, but to me, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that at all, because it's just material to me. It's just like, he's still there. He's still, just because I didn't write him back didn't mean to me that he wasn't there, but I can understand why he's like, man, you just don't seem to care much about me. I wrote you and you didn't reply till a month later. So I understand that. I understand that you got the fellowship aspect. Even if I didn't have anything to say, well, that didn't mean I shouldn't have wrote him back, right? But anyway, I don't feel that way. See, what I'm saying is I'm different in the fact that I could just not write you back for a month and I don't feel anything. Maybe somebody else, they would feel like, maybe they need to write them back right then, but not me. I just don't feel that. But I need to understand what age I'm in to some degree, right? So anyway, what I'm saying is, but I look at it on a material basis. And I think that's what we're going to get to when we get to the age of Capricorn. It's going to be on a more, the reason I'm saying this is because I am a Capricorn. I know how the age of Capricorn is going to be because I am one. Okay? So, and it's like this. If we got a Paul, well, somebody's got to be John the Revelator. Okay? Just saying. Now, look, if somebody else comes along and does a better job at it than me, then good for them. I'll listen to them. That's fine. If there's somebody who, whatever, cool. Okay? But nobody else had applied for the position yet of John the Revelator. We had a Paul. We had Don Parnell's Paul. Okay, well, I thought this is my application for the position of John the Revelator in the Age of Aquarius. Okay, so anyway, I'm putting my resume in as to why I think I would make a great John the Revelator in the Age of Aquarius. Here's all my criteria. Here's everything. Here's my experience. Here's my references. Here's all the reasons why I think I would be great at this job. So anyway, and I still haven't really got to it yet, but I'm getting there. Yeah. Here's what I do. I've done a study of people to try to figure out what I was dealing with these ages, and then I'm going to get right into it. I studied people, okay? I knew we're going into the age of Aquarius, so what do? Well, I studied Aquarian people, okay? So, and my cousin, which, don't get me wrong, it's not just a study, but, I watch a little bit of more reason to watch, just in our daily conversations, but my cousin is an Aquarius, so I'm like, me and him, we talk a lot, and I'm like, so I'm kind of also watching to see what things he does to try to understand what the age that I'm in, because how it's if you find an Aquarian person out here, you've got a pretty good idea of how they act. You understand, how the things that interest them. You can compare that to the age and realize what the age is going to be interested in and how it's going to act and its ups and downs and everything, blah blah blah, or lack thereof in the case of Aquarius when it comes to ups and downs to some degree, but since things have been equaled out. But anyway, so anyway, you can do the same thing. Once you learn people, then you can apply it to the age and you can understand it better. Okay. So what I began to do was I was thinking, well, I'm a Capricorn, so the age of Capricorn in 2,000 years is going to apply the things that I am is going to be that. Okay. So, like with the Aquarius dude, my Aquarius cousin, I'll tell you all a story. I'm talking to my cousin. He's an Aquarius, okay? We live basically in this area, like, roughly, where there, it's just one holler, it's just one holler, we say holler here. We lived up this holler, anyway, pretty much, we lived up his holler, and there's like 5 miles up his holler. And there's only like one Baptist church in the whole dang holler. Okay. As far as I know, the only church in the whole holler is a Baptist church. Okay. I've never told him anything about the message. Nothing. As far as I know, he don't know about William Branham. He don't know nothing about none of that stuff. Okay. Which is fine. And so anyway, I get to talking to him one day and I'm like, I'm going to just throw some stuff at him just to see what he thinks. So I'm talking to him and I'm like, what do you think about the end times and the end times and the book of Revelations and Armageddon and all that? And he looks at me, and he's just like, without hesitation, he looks at me. My Aquarian cousin looks at me and he says, yeah, that was World War II. Like, it's already happened. It's already over, essentially was what he was saying, which William Branham said it was World War II too, because he was talking about Mussolini and all that, and Mussolini going into Libya and all this crap, and you're saying, well, that meant that was Daniel's vision, that this is the end time, the end of the age of Pisces, and the Jews are going to come back into being a country and all this. Okay, so anyway, it was World War II, literally, people. It was World War II. It was World War II after William Branham like Don Parnell said, Martin Luther King Jr. dying and the Pope dying, and was it Pope Paul and everybody and all these people, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, all these people died. Okay, it was that whole era. It was World War II on up to that, and World War I for that matter, all the way up to that. And so my cousin, he don't know nothing about William Branham. And I look at him, he's like, what do you think about all that, what all that was? And he's like, yeah, it was World War II. That was the Battle of Armageddon and all this stuff, And I'm like, so you grew up in a holler with the dang Baptist church was all we had, and you believe that the Bible is fulfilled essentially? And I never told him anything? Well, you know the reason why? Because he's an Aquarian. Because his nature told him that, because his nature as an Aquarius knows that the age of Pisces is over. You didn't have to tell him anything. It's just his nature. It was his nature to do these things. It was the nature of Don Parnell in the age of Aquarius to come and tell us that these things were over. See, he did it. He did it without, just by nature, he knew. Okay? So, anyway, another thing that my cousin is into is he loves talking about dimensions, and I'm like, yep, there you go. What are we talking about here? The age of Pisces is over. Armageddon's done come and been fought. All and everything's dimensional. Okay? So go figure. That's where we're at. That's what we've been talking about. It's the beginning of the age of Aquarius. His nature is what we've been talking about. The Aquarian nature, the personage of the Aquarian nature is all the things that we've been talking about. Okay? So anyway, so what I'm trying to tell you is that you can look at people and their naturage, and you can understand. You can look at an Aquarian person, you can understand the nature of where we're at. You can look at a Pisces person, and you can like Don Parnell said the other day, he said, you take a Pisces person, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but he said, you take a Pisces person, and they're always creating their own hell. And that's exactly what they do. You meet a Pisces person out here, and everything to them is always that it's like a criminal investigation, and it's like somebody's done something wrong, and we got to find out what they did wrong, and everything, and the situations just went to hell, and everything's went to hell, and it's a heaven or a hell, and it's this or that, because that's exactly, and everything's a mystic thought process on everything, and it's like they're always in like a state of delusion. They don't know exactly what's going on, and they think there's something going on, even maybe when there ain't or something. That's the Piscean nature, and that's why we come through that for 2,000 years, because these people, the Piscean people, they talk to them, and you'll understand the age of Pisces. Be around them for a while, and you'll understand the age of Pisces, okay? You find an Aquarian person, you understand them, and you'll understand the age of Aquarius, okay? So I'm telling you, I brought that up to this. I am a Capricorn, so I'm going to tell you what the age of Capricorn is going to be like before we ever even go to it. I'm going to tell you straight from the horse's mouth, because I am it. And I'm going to tell you how that I think now does not exactly jive with things now. Okay, but I understand. But I'm in this age, so I do jive with these things now, because everybody born in this age is an Aquarius, because it's the age of Aquarius. So even if I'm a Capricorn, you're a Capricorn or a Pisces or an Aquarius or a Leo or what the heck ever you are, you're born in this age, so you do apply to this age at some level. Okay, but on a different level, you might apply to something else, some other age. Okay, so. And then it gets into a little bit of a spiritual thought process too. I'm not just saying this because I'm a Capricorn, but I'm saying there's a little bit of a spiritual thought process on this, and I'm going to do my best to explain it because it's hard to get here. But here goes. This is so difficult for me to explain, but I'm going to try to explain to you the vision that I have, because John the Revelator had a vision, right? Okay, he had a vision of the end of Pisces and beginning of Aquarius. Okay, so he's down there in Pisces having a vision of that. Okay, so now don't ask me how the vision exactly was for him, because I don't know, but it could be also. I think it's this, that visions are different per different ages, because everything gets redefined when you go into a different age. Everything from top to bottom gets redefined as you go into a different age. So it would stand to reason that like prophets got redefined. Okay, what a prophet is got redefined. So it stands to reason that visions, what a vision is, gets redefined from age to age. In my opinion, that's what I think. So what a vision is now might not be what a vision is in 2,000 years. So anyway, this is my version of a vision. What I personally believe is, and this is what I believe that the age of Capricorn will be, and this is what I believe that the end of Aquarius and the beginning of Capricorn will be. I'm talking about going 2,000 years into the future here. I'm talking about the revelation of Wes Cook, essentially. I'm talking about, you know, it was the book of the revelation of Jesus Christ. It was what John the Revelator preached. Well, I'm talking about, because, you know, who's Jesus Christ now? Well, we know it's us, right? So it's me. Okay, so it's me, it's you, it's whoever. So I'm just going to call this the book of the revelation of Wesley Cook, because, you know, I'm Jesus, right? So anyway, we're all Jesus. Okay. So so that's the sermon, that's the title of this sermon. So let's get to it. This is where it gets difficult. What I believe is that I believe that as things are more of a spiritual thing, spiritual intelligence thing in the age of Aquarius. In Capricorn, I believe that they will be material. Okay? So, as Don Parnell said, he said that Aquarius Aquarius and Capricorn are like brothers, really, because they're both ruled by Saturn, for one thing, at least in part, and one age leads into the other. So, and if you ever get around us, you ever get around in a Capricorn and Aquarian, they're like brothers. They're thinking the same things. Like, I noticed whenever I started getting into astrology, and whenever I would meet up with an Aquarius for the first time, I was like, the conversations that we would have would be the same. They would talk, and I'd be like, well, I never thought anybody else was thinking this crazy stuff, the same thing I'm thinking, you know. But they think the same crazy stuff that we think. They think about the same, it's a different take on it, but they're thinking the same crazy stuff that Capricorns. You get around an Aquarius and a Capricorn, and they're like, they've got some social project to take care of humanity or whatever, and they all talk about the same type of stuff. And it's so anyway, so we're in the age of these two brothers, and for the next 4,000 years, we're talking about the next 2,000 years of Aquarius, but we're talking about the next, a lot of times we talk about that, but we can also talk about the next 4,000 years of Aquarius and Capricorn, which Don Parnell did in just the last sermon. So anyway, so we're like brothers, okay? So these ages will kind of meld together to some degree. And Aquarius is the spiritual, free-thinking process that gets us to where we can think. And Capricorn, because we haven't been thinking, really. We haven't been thinking, it hasn't been the age to think. Now in Aquarius, this is the age to think. Okay, so, and then Capricorn will be the age in which we put the thinking into practice. It's the material, down to earth, like Don said, we're in the air, and then it's going to go back to the earth. So we're in the thinking now. We're thinking about how we need to do things, because what you do is, it's like if you go to build a house, we're going to build a house here. The next 4,000 years is going to be building a house. When you go to build a house, then you think about things. You think about, well, I need to cut my boards this way, and I need to nail my boards this way, and I need to pour the concrete this way, and I need to put the roof on this way. That's what we're doing now. That's what Aquarius is now. Aquarius is thinking about how to build a house. Capricorn is going to be when we go to the lumber store, buy the boards, and start nailing them together. Aquarius is the blueprints. Capricorn is the building crew. Okay. So this is what I think. And this, whenever he saw the vision of 2,000 years into the future, and he come back and wrote it down, he probably himself couldn't really do it justice. So I probably can't myself really do this justice, but this is what I think based on my vision. And that was what he thought based on his vision. He did a pretty good job of it. in retrospect. Nobody understood it for 2,000 years, but when they finally did, it made sense. Okay, so I think in 2,000 years, perhaps, if anybody gets to what I'm talking about now, then I may not have done it a very good justice, but somebody will probably say, well, it did make sense after all. So here's what I think. To Capricorn, everything is material. It's taking the thinking and the spiritual and putting it into material doing. So it's bringing it back to the earth. So what I think that, and when I say I think, well, somebody could say, well, what's that got to do with a vision? You're saying you've seen a vision. No, you don't understand. In Capricorn, everything is brought to the earth. Okay, so the vision and the thinking are the same thing. That's what it is. Every day in Capricorn is going to be a vision. The whole thing, I'm seeing a vision as Capricorn. I see a vision. My life, this remote, this phone is a vision. Okay, my wife sitting there is a vision. I don't see. It's not about seeing. People think that there's going to be, people probably thought I was going to tell them about having seen a vision. I did see a vision. I see a vision every day. It's not, I don't have to have a vision where, I couldn't tell whether I was in the body or out of the body like Paul, okay? Now, maybe our modern Paul, I think he does see those. I absolutely believe that he sees those things. He's having visions to where, like he was talking about that vision a while back about looking out his window or something. I can't remember all of it, but he's seen this, the deer getting screwed up by the bear, and they were fighting, and the badger, and the blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I can't remember all that stuff, but he was, he's probably having a vision in terms of can't tell whether he's in the body or out of the body or whatever. Okay, so his vision might be different than the way I see a vision. But that don't mean that they're not both visions. So, and furthermore, it makes sense that if you get into the age of Capricorn, it's everything taken from the intelligence and the understanding and put into the physical. So what I think is going to be is that all this stuff that we had taken as spiritual and thinking and out here and in the body, can't tell whether you're in the body or out of the body, and all this stuff is going to be just what you see. It's going to be, it's the material. The vision will become material. Okay? Because that's the way I look at it. I'm Capricorn. Why do I look at it that way? Why am I predisposed to look at it that way? Why are Aquarians predisposed to talk about dimensions? Why are they predisposed to talk about how that the past ages is over and people need to move on and think different things? Why are they predisposed? Because that's who they are. Okay, well, that's why I'm predisposed to think the way I am, because it's who I am. I'm predisposed to think that everything is a material basis. I don't, things are not, well, it's so difficult to explain, but I'm predisposed to think that things are material, basically kind of like an atheistic thought process on things, that there is no dimensional, perhaps, afterlife or whatever. I'm predisposed to think these things. Now, does that mean that there's not a dimensional afterlife or whatever? Well, it might depend on what age you're in as to whether that, it's in the age of Pisces, there was certainly a afterlife, even though maybe there wasn't an afterlife. Everybody thought there was. So they were predisposed to think that way. Well, I'm not saying that Aquarius is wrong, because they, in their age, they're a dimensional afterlife or whatever. That's perhaps the way it is, because they're predisposed to think that, because that's who they are. That's what it, even if it perhaps isn't so. I mean, like, you got to figure, though, as Capricorn is like neutral energy, then everything just dissolves in us, apparently. Because I thought that for a long time. That, to me, there is nothing else. Because that's what I'm predisposed to think. But does that mean I'm really right? It's not about being right or wrong. That's what Aquarius, the 2,000 years of Aquarius that I just went through, taught me. Okay? So, I know this is it's hard to get out. Okay, this is hard to make sense of. I'm probably like people are like, what? Well, that was the book of Revelations, folks. When the book of Revelations was preached or was written in, 70 AD or 53 AD or what the heck ever, people read it and they were like, what? That's the point. If I say something, if I come up with some cockamamie stuff here, and people listen to this and are like, what? That's exactly that's exactly what I expected. Because, see, Oh boy. I hope I can do this justice. It's so hard. It's so hard when you got to tell about. It must have been so hard for John when he had seen like a vision of some stuff with like a eagle head and a man's head. I don't know. I don't care to know this stuff. But it's like an eagle head and a man head and a lion head and all kinds of stuff and all this stuff he was seeing. I mean, it had to be hard to come back and tell that, right? Okay, so that's the equivalent of the stuff I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing this stuff, and I can't. It's so hard to put into words because I don't look at it the way that this age looks at it, but I understand I'm part of this age, but I'm in this age right now, but I don't look at it the way that everybody's looking at it right now. I look at it from everything is just purely material. Everything has become one essentially. Everything is one. Yeah, I know with the Aquarius version of everything's one, right? See, that's what I'm saying. We're brothers, right? So anyway, so they're like putting the spiritual into things and making it one, and the humanity's one because Aquarius deals with humanity, and that's humanity is kind of like a somewhat more of a spiritual concept in a sense, but then you eventually get to the material version of it too. So I'm dealing with the oneness that they're putting into humanity. I'm putting it into the material. So and you got to figure, as an earth sign, we don't deal with high intelligence in a sense. We don't deal with we do a little bit, but you got to figure we're putting it in terms of just point blank on the ground, and so I don't think of things. I'm not dealing with people as in the sense of humanity exactly. I'm dealing with them in the sense of just material beings. Okay, it's the most evil to the age of Pisces, because Aquarius didn't necessarily believe in good or evil, which is a good thing because they would definitely have no use for me. The Pisceans, I don't think they'd have much use for me right now. I'm talking about stuff like this, but Capricorn is the most evil way of looking at it you can think of by traditional terms of the word evil. It's Satan, Saturn, the planet that rules Capricorn entirely, and Aquarius partially, is the great Satan. Okay, so it is, what I'm talking about is, what was Satan? Satan was worldly. Satan was supposed to be, I got to go back to Piscean terms to try to explain this. Forget Aquarius just for a minute. This is going to take some Aquarian high intelligence to get this out, but I'm going to use Piscean terms to try to describe it. To try to describe Capricorn and Satan and Saturn. Okay, Satan was traditionally worldly, right? Okay, so when you get into the age of Capricorn, it is going to be entirely worldly. Okay, it's going to be all the things that everybody had preached against. That's what it's going to be. Okay, it's going to be that worldliness will be the way. See, Aquarius, in my opinion, I think what it does is it goes from Pisces to where, it was eschew evil and be good, essentially. And then Aquarius is going to be like, well, it's okay either way. And when you get to Capricorn, it's going to be completely flipped on its head. It's going to be that what was previously thought to be evil is going to be good. That will be the good. Okay, I'm not saying that you won't have, like I said about in Aquarius, when we come into Aquarius, even though we got rid of a lot of the things and made God and Satan equal, I think we've still got a process of Christ defeating the devil. You still got that. Okay, but what it is it's now become understanding defeating delusion. That's what it is in Aquarius. That's what Christ defeating the devil is in Aquarius, is understanding defeating delusion. Okay, however, and they do that through making God and Satan equal for one thing. That's how you do it. You defeat delusion that way. So you still got, even though God and Satan are equal, you still got Christ, you still got a type of Christ defeating the devil, because you can't get rid of these things. But that's what it is. When we go into Capricorn, what's going to happen is, as far as I can tell, everything that was thought to be bad is now going to be good, then going to be good, and but there on the same hand, that will be Christ defeating the devil. I don't know how to, it's so hard to get at, but I'm saying that Satan is going to be God, okay? But, as crazy as that sounds, Satan is going to be God. But Satan is going to rule the age. Satan is going to be God. However, by the time we get there, it will make so much sense. It will be that the complete, total opposite way of looking at it will actually be, just like we went from Pisces to Aquarius and learned that things were opposite, and that was actually Christ. The things that we thought were the devil were actually Christ. In a sense, that's kind of a basis of what Capricorn is going to be. By the time we get to Capricorn, the devil is going to be Christ. And I know that sounds crazy now, but in 2,000 years it won't sound crazy. The devil is going to be Christ. The whole Garden of Eden story is going to be completely turned on its head. We've already turned it on its head halfway, because we made it that the things essentially that, and really kind of started to get into the idea of that the complete opposite version of it was, I think what we've done so far is we've made it to where it wasn't wrong. What Eve done, what Eve and the serpent and the whole thing did wasn't wrong. Okay, it's made to be a balanced, even type of thing. Okay, but I suspect that in 2,000 years, what Eve done and what the serpent did will actually be the right thing to have done. It's going to be, and I'm not saying that has kind of already been said, but things like that, everything is going to be completely turned around. The worldly, the material, the things that you weren't supposed to do. In Pisces, it was like don't be of the world. It's like all the way up to William Brahms. It's like don't be like the world. Okay. Aquarius is breaking it into that. But eventually, that's what it's going to be. Eventually, that's everything is going to be the world. It's going to be worldliness. Worldliness is going to be the existence. That's why that I can't deal with these religious people anymore. I can't deal with them at all, because I'm just into worldliness. I'm just totally into worldliness. It's not, and I'm not saying it's not without religion itself. It's the funny thing about it. Is that, like I said, this is so hard. This is so hard to get out. But it's like a worldliness, but it's right. Worldliness will be the holiness, essentially. That's kind of what we always talk about in a sense, because you find out that the most unreligious people were were basically the right ones. Jesus was not religious. People seem to forget that. The religious people were the religious people. What are we talking about here? And then you bring it up to the age of William Branham and all of them, and where we're at now, and somehow here again the religious people have got to be the ones that everybody think is the real religious people. Did anybody not consider what Jesus actually said? He was against the religious people. The Christ, the King of the Kings that everybody's supposed to be worshiping, was against the religious people. And then you bring him up here today, and somehow it's got turned around. Okay, well, that's what it's going to be again. It's going to get turned around again. It's going to be that once again, you give it 2,000 years, we're going to go through Aquarius, and then it's going to get back to the point again that everything that the religious is not going to be religious. It's oh boy. Okay, that's so hard to do. I know you. I don't want to keep everybody forever, and it's just so hard for me to tell this. But maybe the best way to explain it would be that the vision, like I said, it's going to get to the point. I have seen a vision in that the material world and the vision have become one. So I walk around every day. It's for me to explain to you my vision is difficult. So maybe I shouldn't even try. But maybe you've got enough of it to get a little bit of the idea of where I'm trying to come from. But for me, I walk around in a vision all the time. I walk around on the Isle of Patmos all the time, and occasionally I come back to the mainland and I talk to people. But I walk around in an Isle of Patmos condition, to where I'm kind of like out here to myself, and I'm seeing things. Because what was John doing? He was out there on an island by himself, seeing things in the future. Okay, that's what I do. I walk around on an island by myself in my own mind, the island of my mind, the Isle of Patmos of my mind, and I see a vision in the fact of everything that I see around me as the vision of the future. Or I understand that the way that a vision will be just what I see with my literal, natural eyes. Okay? Because everything comes to the earth. It comes to the earth, it comes to the world, it comes everywhere. So what I see, like I said, when I see this remote, when I see this phone, that's a vision. That's a vision. When I see my wife, that's a vision. I'm seeing what I'm seeing now. When I'm looking in the back of this phone preaching right now, it's a vision to me. I'm having a vision. The world is a vision. I don't have to have a vision. I don't have to see an apparition. That's not what it is for me. That's not what the vision is. To understand that the physical is the vision. That I'm living the vision. I'm living the vision. I'm over here in a vision all the time, and I'm trying to tell people this is what I assume in 2,000 years people are going to be thinking. They're going to be looking at it this way, or maybe sooner. I don't know, but they're going to be thinking. They're going to be the vision and the life has become one, and that's where I'm at now. That's where I'm already at, and I walk around in a vision. I walk around constantly in a vision on this Isle of Patmos, and then I come back and I got to try to talk to people. And I'm like, and they're like looking at it from almost, like back in Piscean stuff and church ages, trying to figure out whether they're sacrificing sheep and they got sin problems and this and that. And Don Parnell's out here trying to deal with them over this stuff. And I just look at all this stuff and I'm like, what? I'm almost feel out of place. Whenever to me everything, I just feel out of place almost. I feel like that I got to come back to this stuff, and I almost don't even want to. I don't know how to deal with it anymore, because it's like when you're in a vision, you're in a different state of mind entirely. But I'm still here. Obviously, I'm still here. I'm still here in 23 Aquarius AD, and I'm still dealing with everybody. And I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody because I'm doing this, but I'm just telling you who I am. I'm not really any better because I'm not really any better than the Pisceans, because if I'm not, I'm not any better than the Pisceans or the Aquarians, because, the Aquarians are in the age that they're in. They're in the right age. I'm in the age forward. I'm tomorrow, and then Pisces is yesterday. So, you got to have all three, right? You got to have yesterday, today, and tomorrow, right? So, nobody's wrong, but nobody's wrong or right, think Aquarius. So, but I'm telling you, I have trouble dealing with this stuff. And when you're in a vision all the time, and you're in this situation, then I can't relate anymore. It's hard, it's difficult for me to come back and relate. And I just think, in short, I think that the point, what I'm trying to say is that if you, and I haven't done this justice, but I got to cut it off somewhere. But if you take the same principle and look at Don Parnell, whenever he preaches, and look and see, not what he's saying, but what he's saying. If you think about it's not so much the things that he says that makes him Paul, it's the things that he says that makes him Paul. It's that what he is doing makes him Paul. It makes him like these things that he's saying as epistles, okay? Epistles to these spiritual church quote-unquote churches. So you got to, it's like the same principle we did with William Branham. William Branham was saying all this stuff, but we knew he was, contained in his message was the Jesus type that was crucified, okay? So you had to recognize what was really going on. So if we take Don Parnell, and if you recognize what's really going on based on how he's doing things and all that makes it what it is, then what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not saying that I can explain to you the book of Revelations, a modern book of Revelations, the way that John the Revelator did, exactly. In a sense, though, that's what I am saying, is that through, if you apply the same principle that I just applied to those two, if you apply that to what I'm saying here, then you will understand that that's what it is. That's what I am doing. If you can read in between the lines of what I'm trying to say, and I've just come right out and said it basically, but if you can read in between the lines, then you'll see that based on what I'm doing makes it that. Okay, so anyway, maybe this is just chapter 1. I don't know. Maybe it's just part 1 on this series. Maybe it's just the first chapter of the book of the Revelation of Wes Cook. I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, maybe there'll be more chapters. Maybe I'll be able to explain it better as time goes on, the vision around me that I see, and this vision that I have of the revelation of the future. So, and it's like this. Try this. John the Revelator, although he's seen all the way to the age of Aquarius, he looked back he was looking back through, so he's seen all the way to Aquarius, but he was looking back through Pisces. So I figure the things that I'm saying, the far extent of it is going to get to perhaps Capricorn, but, and maybe even beyond, because the book of Revelations, we're just kind of discovering now, that the book of Revelations may still have some bearing upon the age of Aquarius, and it wasn't just for the age of Pisces. So I'm not saying that what I'm saying is not going to be for the age of Capricorn to some degree, but it's going to be for the age of Aquarius coming up all the way back through. I'm looking back on the age of Aquarius and seeing all this stuff. So what stuff I'm saying now is going to likely be what you're going to encounter in the next 2,000 years. You might encounter it tomorrow. You might encounter some of the things that I'm saying tomorrow in some kind of a way. So as more time goes on, that's what you're going to run into. What I'm saying now is what you're going to run into as time goes on. And you're going to be running into more of these things. And we knew that anyway. We knew that we was going to run into more, that we were going to become more like everybody else, essentially. And it's going to get more worldly, but worldly is going to be the right way to go as time goes on. But there will still be a holiness to it. So it's difficult to explain, but that's the point. Let me leave you with this thought. Like I said, there might be more to this, but let me leave you with this thought. This might just be chapter 1, but let me leave you with this thought. The book of the Revelation, like I said, whenever it was written, people picked it up and read it, and they were like, what the hell did I read? What the hell is this? Well, if I have left anybody with the impression after preaching this of them listening to it and looking at it and being like, what the hell is he preaching? What the hell is he trying to say? Then that's exactly what I wanted to do. That's exactly the point. It's not supposed to be just like, what? That's the point. That just, to me, it just proves what I'm saying is accurate. Is that it's not supposed to be understood very well. It's not. So anyway, I'll leave you with that thought. We'll see where it goes. Anyway, I did the best I could. See y'all later.